everyone is just telling me, like everything I see is telling me, you've got to hide this. This is embarrassing. You're not a man if you are losing your hair. You're pathetic.
Healthy, yeah.
You're not healthy. You're fat. You're weak. You're ugly. Like, no one's going to ever find you attractive. No one's going to take you seriously. And that was the message that I was getting. And what I had started to kind of tell myself that. And then...
The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Vitruvian Podcast, a podcast centered around self-mastery. I'm your host, Zach Shankin. Today, I'm joined by Harry James. Harry is an entrepreneur, YouTuber, world traveler, and role model to thousands of men around the world, empowering men with hair loss through storytelling, vulnerability, authenticity, and community. I'm beyond excited and grateful for our conversation today. Harry, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you, man. Quite the intro. I appreciate that.
Of course, bro. Yeah, I always make an effort to give people their shine and give credit where credit's due. I think men in general don't typically get complimented or like proper, authentic praise. Certainly not frequently. And then, yeah, it's my job to make people comfortable. Obviously, we've become fast friends over the past day and a half, and those that tune into my channel will see the behind-the-scenes vlog and your channel and see all the content that's getting put together. It's quite this little production we've got going on. And to those that have just arrived at the podcast and haven't seen anything else I've put on, yes, your eyes do not deceive you. I am shaved head at the moment, a proud member of the bald squadron at the moment. And
Shaved head gang.
That was the impetus for our journey. But we touch more on that in your video, which I don't want to dwell too much on this podcast about. We'll direct people that way. If you're curious more about my decision making, we'll certainly maybe get into it a little bit. But I appreciate you coming on the show, brother.
No, thanks for having me, mate. Honestly, excited. You made the effort to come here. We've had fun, put some stuff together. A man of your word, and it's been enjoyable. So I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, for sure. I guess that's a decent place to start. Like, tell me about why you said yes, or what was going through your head when you received kind of my outreach. I know it's a little bit uncommon.
Yeah, obviously I've been doing this whole content thing, like putting stuff out on YouTube, putting things online for coming up 6 years now. And I think anytime someone, especially, when I was trying to get traction and things were kind of building, anytime I reached out to someone and they were like, yeah, sure, it was just great, a great thing, And so when people hit me up for like interviews, guys who are even just like writing college papers, and they're like, hey man, can I ask you if I can, like I always will. But I'll admit, like selfishly as well, with my content, I'm trying to always elevate, and the fact that you were willing to come here, and we can kind of have a bit of vlogging and kind of see your moment, because you obviously decided to take off the hair and experiment, with how that is. Obviously, I thought, got to jump at the chance, It's always good to connect, always good to expand. So, yeah, dude, I was like, let's make it happen. And what are we, 2 months down the line-ish? Maybe a bit more from that first message. So, again, props to you for actually seeing it through. But this is something I want to do more of. So, yeah, the whole thing's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's definitely my favorite part of entering into this creator world is bringing those online interactions in person, both with like my personal community. I'll probably be hosting my first in-person event with my community later this year, but even just meeting other creatives, like it's just so elevating. I know we went back and forth in the car about the power of the mastermind effect, just going back and forth on the creative process. It provides that third-party perspective to like audit everything that's got going on in your world. And like, we're all solving such similar problems. And I think that that's true not only in entrepreneurship and creation, but life in general. So it's important to like put yourself in front of as many people and pieces of information as possible, because if you just stay in a silo and live totally one of one, you have to solve all those issues on your own, but you double your exposure and data set by just talking to somebody else. And it's like, oh, you haven't tried X, Y, and Z, or you should take a look at this. You should connect to so-and-so. It just kind of proliferatively connects you to the world so much more. And then it is just kind of fun to live the adventure, travel abroad, and come make it happen. But I guess for those of the audience who don't know who you are, aren't familiar with your work, let's wind the clock back. I don't like, as a podcast host, I think it's a lazy question, like the origin story.
Where it started, yeah.
But yeah, tell me a little bit about.
Sure. I mean, it goes back. I mean, obviously, so my main thing now is obviously the BaldCafe YouTube channel and other things that come off of that. Obviously, I'm on Instagram and I do bits like that, podcasts. I got a book in the works and I've done things like that, right? That's kind of the main thing I focus on. But before that, I moved away overseas and I was really trying to build something for myself. I didn't know what that would be. I didn't know how, I was going to make it happen. But I started to experiment with like creating content, a few YouTube channels.
Well, what age, what country, like where?
Okay, so we're in Plymouth now in the UK, right? This is where I went to university, graduated there, or here, and I worked for like a year and a half. But my whole thing was, my whole plan was to join the police force here in the UK. When I graduated, that was not happening, just politics basically, and I had to wait 5 years. That was what they told me before I could start. So I thought, I've planned for the last 3-4 years at least. This was my career path. This was like I had the direction, so I knew what I was doing. And then like that, it was changed, right? I mean, not so, but you're 21, 22 at this point. You're like ready to grab life by the balls, so to speak, and just get going. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? Just sit around for like 5 years, So I was, naturally, obviously, I picked up a day job because from university, I was working in a bar, just bar job, to help pay for life. Graduated, right, carried on. I didn't want to move back home, so carried on with that. And, but I was like, come on, I've got to get a real job. Let's get serious here. So I got the real job, but it was, the 9 to 5, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that structure. But for me, like, that's so different to the life I wanted. I wanted to join the police because of the diversity and the kind of the not normal aspect of it. That's what really drew me into it. And couldn't do that. So I'm every day scrolling on Indeed.com specifically. No shout out to those guys. And it was just soul destroying, quite honestly, because my passion was in one thing, couldn't do that. And nothing else was really like sparking my interest. And, after months and months of like misery, essentially, like trying to find like something to get me excited, a career, because if it was a job, fine. Like if I really was interested by the company, what they were doing, or the people, whatever, like that's great. But there just wasn't anything like that at the time. And literally up popped Teach English in China, and I thought, well, it's different, it's certainly different, and nothing else has got me remotely like. I didn't feel anything for anything else that I saw, but for this, I just I felt something, to be real.
Intuitive pull.
Yeah, I was just like, okay, applied, and literally the next day, the guy was like, okay, let's do interviews. He lined me up with some interviews, and I kind of just got carried away by the momentum of that. Honestly, like I wasn't even thinking at that point. It was like, okay, send me all your details. So I just did it, and then he's like, right, you got to sign up for this online. They call it like a TEFL course. Like you got to have some qualification, right? Even though I'd graduated. Right, sign up for that. Like get that done. You got to get that done before we can, you can get your visa. So I was like, oh, all right. I'm just doing it. I'm just going with it. But I'm thinking like in the back of my mind, like, am I actually going to move though? Because I really wasn't serious about it. I thought this is all well and good, but am I actually going to do it? Like, come on, I'm not actually going to move to China. And then I got the job offer, and then I spoke to a few of my buddies, and they were like, why not, dude? And I was like, yeah, literally, why not? Like, I'm not doing anything here. Nothing's excited. I've got the job offer. Like, all I need is a flight, essentially, now. I need to just book a flight, and I can be there. I literally just took a leap of faith. I didn't know I couldn't speak a word, like, literally couldn't speak a word of that. I didn't even know to say hello, like, or thanks, or anything. Like left, packed up my stuff, moved it back home, and then just took a suitcase, booked the ticket. Because you hear horror stories as well, like even back then of like companies that would like take your passport and then like like slave labor you and stuff. Like essentially they're like, you can't leave until you do this, like you have no say. And you look for those things, like you look for reasons to talk yourself out of doing it. And I just thought, look, if I go there and it's a disaster, I can just come home. Like at the very worst, I can just find a way to come home. And it was the opposite, dude, complete opposite. Like I'd never been, I chose deliberately to go somewhere that was like totally different as I could get to England, and it really was this like small town for China, right? No, like nobody really speaking English. It was kind of countrified. And it was just like, whoa. I can remember the one thing that really noticed it was the smell, and not in a bad way. It's just like, it was so different. Like it was just like nothing my senses had never experienced like that before. And literally like some guy just met me at the airport. Like we got in some car, drove like 4 hours after, the whole like flight situation. And he's like, okay, this is your apartment. And don't get me wrong, like it was pretty bad, like compared to what most people are used to. But I thought it was great. Like it was just so different. He's like, right, here's your apartment. I'll see you tomorrow. Like I'll show you around a bit. We'll get your phone sorted. I just remember sitting on my bed like, what am I doing?
Where am I?
But it felt great, dude. I felt so alive for like the first time. And I don't want to like drag the story out, but basically, it was a legit job. Like I legit like got into it. I had to teach these kids like properly. It's not a joke. It was starting to transition from being that like typical joke, like just be a white guy in front of these kids and just whatever. Like it doesn't matter as long as the parents think we're doing something cool. It wasn't like that. It was legit. Like you had to do it. They were trying to make money. Yeah, like had to do all the lesson plans and stuff. But I really enjoyed it. And after a year, I said I'd just go for 1 year as well. I forgot to mention that. I was like, I'll just go for a year. I'll go for a year, come back. But I had such a good time. I was just like, what? Why go back? Like, what am I going back for? And they as an incentive, right? They naturally offer you a bit more money to stay because they want they want a bit of continuity with the teachers and the students, because if they know the teacher's going to stay, then more of the students who now know you are also going to sign up for the next year and stuff, right? So it's a legit business. And I'm thinking, yeah, sweet, like a bit more money, like I can move into another apartment maybe. I didn't in the end, but I ended up getting a dog. We touched on that, and I was just like getting so carried away. And actually one of the reasons then why I stayed was another like personal reason was I took a trip for the first time as well. I'd had money, like, because the cost of living was so low, I was able to save up money. So me and two of my buddies, we took a trip to Vegas and LA for like 2 weeks, right? I had like a month off. So I was like, right, let's, I had like $2,000 in the bank. I was like, let's just go to the States and just spend it all. And obviously we did. But $2,000 then to me, dude, was like a lot of money. I'd come from being broke, poor in uni and stuff. And had the time of my life there, but something happened where I met like loads of people from around the world on this trip into the States, right? All over Europe, like Spain, like Latin America, all of these places. And they could obviously like switch in and out between languages, like spoke perfect English, then spoke whatever, Danish or whatever. And I was just like, there's me and my 3 buddies, like can't do anything like that. And I just thought, this is so embarrassing. Like, I just felt pathetic in that moment, honestly, and like inadequate. And I was like, right now, the way my life is the best chance I've got to learn another language. I never did it in school. Like I had the opportunity, but I just didn't take it seriously at all. I thought it was a joke. I was like, everyone learns English. Why am I learning French here? Like, what is the point in this? And that's genuinely how I thought. But then when you get into the real world, obviously, it's like, okay, this is pretty bad. Like the fact that I am limited in this way. So being in China, I was like, right, it's the best chance I've got to learn another language. So when I returned for the second year, I went hard on learning Chinese. And I was like studying myself at the time. But I just would practice. I became like obsessed, just practice non-stop, talk to everyone, go buy my water downstairs. And I'd just like chew the woman's ear off for like an hour about her family, like what are you cooking, like asking her what's this, how do you say that, and they loved it. They thought it was great, so it was even better, right? They were willing to help me out. And then life changed then, because you were able to actually like assimilate into society. So it just opened up like infinite doors in this new like amazing interest. It's just so different. You just want to, people taking you around their house, and like you can communicate now with people and learn so much more. And then that was it, dude. Like I was there for 5 years in the end. Just the ball just kept rolling. I went to university to study it in the end, and that was a real good moment. You know, they have like a language, what do you call that? Like a test system.
Mm-hmm.
Top 1-6. I got to like level 5, and I was like, okay, that's good. That's pretty good. So I stopped after that. But that was kind of like the personal front, dude. It opened, just taking that one decision to like leave, like that leap of faith to just do something different, like totally changed the course of my life, you know. And I mentioned it to you before, but I should just mention it here, like, because I'd moved from a place of just like survival, you know, being in the UK, just graduated, got my student debt, you know, working minimum wage job just to pay rent and like really scraping by. I had no room left, or no even like desire or anything to entertain the idea of doing anything different. You know, it was literally just like, I need this job, I need to go to work and just try and just get through it. And there was nothing left to do more. But when I moved to China, honestly, one of the biggest things it gave me was that security. I didn't have to worry about paying rent. I didn't have to worry about buying food or just the general like things that we all have to do, because it was quite well paid. Well, not even, but it was just the cost of living was so low, and the lifestyle set up there was so good. I could actually like relax enough to entertain the idea of like, what could I do with my life, like if I wanted to do more. And that's really what sparked me trying to think of ideas. And I did the usual, like, let's start a clothing brand, like let's what else was it, I was trying to build an app, like a live streaming app where you could teach people things and they would like tip you. So rather than just like setting up lessons, you'd just be like, have a schedule that you stream onto your students and they just tip you, like, rather than pay for the access or whatever. Because then live streaming apps like that were big in China at the time. So I was like, that's a good idea, I should do that. I did it for about 6 months and I was like, coding like really is not for me. But I stuck to it for 6 months, and that's what got me started making videos. So I was reviewing other apps, because I was like, look, if I actually do build an app here, I need some people need to know about it. So I was like, right, I'll build an audience of people that are interested in this sort of thing, and then be like, hey, I've built my own app, like go download it. And I did like 50 videos, and then one of them, dude, was an app that was, I don't know if you've seen it, I'm sure it was called like the Manly app or something. And it was like this app that you could Photoshop yourself. So the advert is like some dude that is clearly like his normal body with like the abs and the tattoos and the tan and stuff, right? And the like the jawline. And then they photoshopped him to look like real out of shape and like pale and whatever, like fat face. And then the advert is like, puts his real like ripped body back on, but like enhanced, like it's photoshopped obviously. And it's like, the message is like, yeah, don't post a picture of your normal body when you can use this app to like
enhance,
fake that you've got abs and like bigger biceps. And I was just like disgusted by it. You know, I was like, what is this? What even is this message? Like, I was like, how is there even a market for this? You know, because there obviously is. Like, it didn't exist, and they can't pay for ads necessarily. Like, if nobody thought it wasn't going to be downloaded by anybody, right? And I just thought, no, this is awful. And looking at that app gave me the same feeling that I had when I first started losing my hair. So during this whole time that I've mentioned, the last few years in China, I was obviously dealing with my own hair loss issues. And I dealt with it at the time that I'd shaved off my hair, and I dealt with it by the time I was doing these app reviews on camera. But then I was trying to review this app seriously, and I thought, can I swear on this podcast? I just thought, like, this is bollocks. I was like, this is utter shit. And I got like kind of pissed off by it, to be honest, like just switched up mid video. I was like, no, I was like, this is bollocks. And I just told my story about the hair. And I was like, this is exactly how I felt every time I'd be on Instagram and like, I'm losing my hair. And everyone is just telling me, like everything I see is telling me, you've got to hide this. This is embarrassing. You're not a man if you are losing your hair. You're pathetic.
Healthy, yeah.
You're not healthy. You're fat. You're weak. You're ugly. Like, no one's gonna ever find you attractive. No one's gonna take you seriously. And that was the message that I was getting, and I knew it, like, deep down, that was bollocks. Like, I knew that's not me. I was like, I'm not a joke though. Like, I'm not like a piece of shit that no one wants to look at or listen to. But the thing is, like, my insecurity over my hair loss, I had started to kind of tell myself that, and then I was seeing all this stuff out there that was, and I'm not like saying this to be like, oh, I blame the system for my insecurity, not in that way, but that was the message that I was being fed, like, you know, for to sell all the products and things that are out there, right? The whole hair loss industry, obviously that's the message that they need to send. They're never going to say to you, like, to be honest, mate, it's not really that bad. Like, sure, you feel bad about it now, but just give it a try. Like, see what it's like with no hair, and if you can live for your life, and chances are you probably do all right, and you don't actually need to bother buying any of this stuff. Of course not, right? That's not how any of that stuff works. So naturally they feed you this, they kind of hype up your insecurity, right? And I was just like, this is exactly how I felt then, and it's bollocks. And I just said to the people that were watching, and at that time it was like 5 views a video, I was like, do not ever like think to yourself for a second that you need to Photoshop your picture to have it out there for you to be like liked or good enough or whatever. I was like, there's enough stuff you can do in the real world, and not even like the basic, I'm not even getting to the point of like, you know, eat healthy, like yeah. I'm literally just saying like, just like do your thing, like just don't even get into that headspace, you know. And the video did really well, basically. Like loads of guys came through, just I don't know how they found it, I don't even know what I titled it, to be honest. I think it was like, this app is bullshit, like don't download it. And they were like, dude, they were like, thanks for just like talking about it, because I'm kind of worried about the same thing, or I'm going through the same thing, and it's just nice to know that other people have the same worries. And I was like, fuck, it made me feel so good. And it was the first time that through like making videos, and I'd been trying for like a good year, that I didn't need to do any research. Like I didn't need to like get I didn't need to like hype myself up to talk about it. Like I literally this podcast can go on for 10 hours, dude. Like I could have talked about it all day long because I felt that strongly about it, and I'd obviously had that experience. And I don't know, dude, for some reason the whole hair thing for me, because it took me to such, like, it took me from a place where I thought I was like super confident, life was going amazing, and it literally took me to like the pits, you know, and it made me think things about myself that just aren't reasonable. Well, yeah, not true at all, but just aren't reasonable. Like they aren't, like, no, I don't want any guys to ever think that, you know. And the process of me accepting the hair loss and putting myself out there like this, like being able to get into being able to know, like, okay, all these guys, even online, are saying to me like, yeah, but no one's going to find you attractive anymore, or life is going to be more difficult. I was like, sweet. I was like, bring it on, dude. Like, because what's the alternative? I'm just going to be like, okay, yeah, life is going to be shit, so I just won't even try then, you know? Like, these are the cards I've been dealt. Like, let's just do what I can do, you know, because that's all I can do. Like, bring it on almost, you know? And I'm going to feel better when I achieve that success that I want, whatever that is, right? Despite being bald, going bald, it's going to feel like infinitely better than if I'm doing the most to not be like actually myself to achieve those things. Like if you're doing it on hard mode, right, and you succeed, it's like sweet, it's even better.
Well, that, and if you're trying to hide it along the way, it's going to make it, that's the actual hard mode, because it's self-suppression.
Yeah.
And that self-suppression is going to be taking your life force energy. And like we talked about on your video, like my reasoning behind it is like, once I became aware that I thought about it at all, it's like, okay, you're allocating some amount of your attention and resources. Sometimes you might have a good day, you might have bad days. But if you're thinking about it at all, especially as a man with a mission, like when you're on the mission, that is the priority. Like you were put here, in my opinion, by God for a reason. Is it productive at all to be thinking about it at all, to be fussing with your hair, be hiding it, wearing a cap, especially like hopping on camera? Like you can't be thinking like, oh, is this the right environment? You have to like lean full on into it. And then, yeah, of course, like it's cool because you can hear your attachment to the issue and attachment to, or connection to the mission so much.
Yeah, dude, I just feel so strongly about it because just I think from my own experience, and then, you know, dude, when guys get on when I have a call with guys and they want to share their story, or even, you know, I do a lot of calls where they're like, dude, I literally just need someone to talk to about this because this is getting too much now, you know. And the stories I've heard, dude, obviously loads stick out to me, but just even a young man who's got like drive and ambition and they want to be doing something with their life, as I was, you know. Don't forget, like, before this is, you know, I've gone to China, I've learning a new language, I'm trying to like really make something of myself. These are the best years of my life. And then it was like train crash, you know, just because of the hair. But I knew that wasn't me, right? I knew I was still the guy like before. I did have all this drive and ambition and whatever, the mission. But it really had the ability to kind of derail me and ultimately possibly just take that whole thing away. I could have spent 30 years, as some guys do, you know, just completely consumed by my insecurity over going bald. And I was like, if I can, it started, of course, like, if I can just save one person from that, you know, then I've got to do this. And obviously it exploded into a thing. But I was just touching on there, guys saying to me, like, I just want my life back, you know? A young guy, like, I remember, dude, Dale, like, maybe he was guy number 6 or something on the channel. Forgive me for not remembering it exactly. It's a few years ago now, but he's now like produced his own music. He plays live shows, and at the time, he like had the ambition to do those things, but he just couldn't ever. He was like, there is no way I'm ever gonna go in front of people looking like this or feeling like this, you know, dude. And it was like literally that was the first one that I was legit like felt like I was gonna tear up on, when he was like, dude, I just want my life back. Like, I legit just. This is taken so much from me. Like, this is just consuming me all the time. I've done so much to try to like get the hair back, to you know, hoping that would kind of save me. You know, I remember his parents paying for him to have all these different treatments and things. But even then, it was still like so much going into the hair. He was like, I just want my life back. And I remember hearing that, like, oh my God, like this is so real. This is so true, you know. And obviously I was like, dude, let's get your life back, you know. And he did, you know. He kind of went through that whole thing, got himself out there, and yeah, he had a bit of like a hat wearing transition and different relationships and all, but dude's thriving now, and so many of the guys are, and it's just what I love to see. And I've the what's that word, not ambition, but the kind of momentum, the hunger, the drive for me to be doing this is like never left, dude. Like 6 years ago, I honestly feel like we're not even halfway, you know?
Yeah.
And it's important. So, yeah, BaldCafe kind of started that way, you know? And I thought, right, people are resonating with this. Guys would then be like, yeah, but when is the right time to shave it off then? Or when is the right time to do X, Y, Z? Or, but what about my family? Like, what about and I was like, okay, there's a lot to talk about here. And I got started with, I wrote out 50 video ideas, 50 like talking points, started the new channel, what is now BaldCafe. I think it was called something else on it. It was called like Bald Inc. when I started or something, like incorporated, right? And changed it to BaldCafe, and I was like, just ran with it, dude. I ran with it, and I'm proud of myself, but I'm more proud of the guys that have helped me build it by sharing their stories, because I think a lot of people like don't give them credit for how big of a deal that is. Like, this is something that was there, like, for a lot of the guys, their biggest ever insecurity, and they've gone from trying to keep it a secret from everyone in their life to literally like putting it out on the internet for potentially millions of people to see, and to openly scrutinize them for, you know, or have their opinion on. And not everybody's cut out for that, as we know, you know, but they do it. And through that, they've built this huge like resource for guys that are struggling, and they're looking for that. You know, there's probably something inside of the guys that come to the channel that are looking, they kind of know they could accept it or they want to, but they just don't know how. And that's really what the channel is there to do. God, I'm forever grateful for every guy that's come to the channel or DM me to share their story on Instagram. Like, I cannot say that enough, because that's ultimately what it is. Huge community that's been built, and built this massive resource. Honestly, it's exceeded my expectations, and hopefully
Powerful, man.
We're just going, yeah.
And what I think is like really profound, especially, you know, I have the window of the creator, as opposed to just previously, you know, somebody who was consuming even the rabbit hole of the BaldCafe YouTube channel, like what's awesome is that like all you ever did, you had to lead by example, right? It was like share your story first, your experience, your vulnerability, and then the next person would be like, you know what, that is okay to talk about, or like, you know, that is something that we can now talk about, we the group, we the collective. And then you just, like you said, you build this compendium of resources and stories and people in different journeys. They struggle with different aspects of it. And, you know, masculinity is an interesting topic we don't have to directly address, but it's been under assault. Like it's tough to touch on because I think the topic lacks so much nuance. And I feel like I have to offer so many different caveats. But generally speaking, I think for a very long time, men have struggled to have formal like community in like a way that is like actually healthy and conducive to like the masculine spirit and energy.
Now, so yeah, it's kind of lost. I don't want to like interrupt you there. You're on a flow, but we used to have things in this country. I don't know what it was like in the States, but like men's working clubs or like men's social clubs.
Yeah.
So like guys would go there to hang out, talk, like, and it was a space for them. And they've all, you know, most of them they're just old dudes in there now, like that used to be doing that back in the day, but they're a thing of the past, you know. I saw someone say that like the degradation or whatever you want to call it of the typical like working men's social club that they used to have, you know, play darts, like shoot pool, like have a few drinks, like after work, whatever, has been lost because it's like seen as sexist or whatever, right? But I think it's important, like bro time doesn't do it justice, but essentially at the baseline level, you know, it's like, yeah, just like legitimately hanging out with your male friends, talking is,
well, because I think the biggest thing is that like no one would bat an eye at like, you know, girls having girls' night, or, you know, I'm going to the book club, or we're doing dinner club. Like it's still very accepted, and women are so good at naturally seeking out and cultivating their own little like communities and men, I think, struggle to form the container to do the same thing. And men have issues that only men can resonate with. Women have issues that only women can resonate with. So both need their people and their times. And yeah, as things have continued to accelerate and we live in this very like stratified world where now it's like, you don't even have to go into your office anymore. You know, there's no like third, like there's been like this joke on Twitter and the internet, like the third place. There's like a place you work, a place you live, and there used to be a third place, a place that you would go to hang out, whether it was the club, a cafe, a library, a park, some sort of community center. But like that held like your kind of human spirit element, because like you have your home and your home life, and that holds where you physically live, your family, and then work is the thing that you do to support that. But then the third place is kind of like where your creativity can play, as well as like the space to hold you and your issues. And yeah, I think the working club, I don't know that the US had an analogous thing. Obviously in university age people, we have like fraternities, which for better or for worse, there are good and bad experiences. I was involved in a fraternity in my college experience, which I've talked about before on the podcast, and was super important to me, very transformational. And there was definitely elements that you would see in like the movies, but then also, you know, guys getting up and sharing stories about the shit that they're going through. Like, hey, I'm struggling with pornography. My dad has cancer. I don't know. I lost my uncle. Like, you know, like guys holding space for that. It's like remarkable when you see a 20-something-year-old kid that the other night on Thursday was like doing a beer funnel, but like now he's like standing up and has somebody in this group of people to speak about. Because without creating those containers, like without the fraternity environment, like where does that kid go? Like,
yeah, I think isolation, like self-isolation stuff is just, I think most people would agree, is just like the worst thing, you know, especially if you're kind of like trying to get somewhere or figure things out for yourself, or, you know, if you're coming from a dark place where you want to get to a higher place, for lack of a better phrase, to isolate yourself is like, no, dude, it only goes the reverse, you know, in that way.
And
so
it's
even just being around people, like you said earlier.
I think for men, it's a tempting illusion, And I think it's going to go down as one of the bigger psyops of like the recent generation, like the idea of monk mode. Like when you need to figure yourself out, you need to choose solitude, you need to lock yourself away, you need to like isolate. And I think that periods during the day, you need to be alone just to create space to be creative and think and like, okay, no stimulation. What do I think about this? But I don't think you need, I actually think it's very unhealthy spiritually and physically to have periods of your life where you're just alone, extended, like months on end, like I'm grinding, I'm building. Like that is a scam. First of all, you'll build slower than as we talked about, being in front of somebody else and actually getting feedback on your idea and not being in a vacuum. But additionally, you get that your energy, your cup is being filled. Somebody's like, no, keep going, bro. Like, I know it's hard, but like you're onto something special here. And that energy, it compounds over time. But as men, it's like, I can handle it. I can be an island. Like there's such a temptation to lean into that. Like I got it. But I think it's a scam.
I always, I mean, it kind of relates to this, maybe slightly different, but I always remember hearing Mr. Beast say, like when he first started to try and build like the success he's at now, he only got there at the speed he did essentially because it was like he had a group of, I don't know, him and like 3 other dudes or something, all trying to do the same thing. So they would all be able to learn from each other's failures so that he could like fail at like 4 times the rate of just one person, because essentially he had to go through all of those mistakes to get to where he is. But because there was like 4 of them working together or essentially like sharing in the same goal, they could learn from each other's mistakes and successes. So it just like 4x'd his, speed to ascendance to the top. But that was interesting. I mean, kind of relates to what you're saying there.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. And by extension, like I was kind of saying at the very beginning of this podcast, like life is the same thing. We are all trying to solve the life issue. Like you sitting in your room and being like, what is the point of all of this? Not just like, what do I do? Or how do I build a better funnel for my business? Or how do I attract clients? Or, I need to do this website thing. Like that's its own thing and it helps to be around people. But also we're all thinking about these larger, I mean, maybe not everybody, but a good majority of people I think struggle with the existential stuff, the philosophical stuff. And so instead of being in a dark room by yourself and doom scrolling the internet and like trying to find the scariest answer to your problem, which is what the internet is going to try to feed you, have a dialogue with somebody. Be like, I've really been feeling like kind of lost lately. And then they'll be like, dude, actually me too. And then you're like, wow, maybe being lost is how it's supposed to feel. And like we can talk about how it's different for each of us. And because of that inner monologue, I think it's self-critical. You've got all this like what so-and-so said, your childhood trauma, like it's noisy in your head. And you often are pretty you meaning anyone is extremely self-critical, but then you would never be that mean to me. No. So you would be like, nah, you're good, man. Like you look at the positive, like, and you can be that kind of mirror, but like almost with a rose tint. So yeah, I think especially for men, you have to avoid the psyop or the scam or the temptation to like isolate, because it may feel good for a little bit because you're not getting so much feedback. You're not getting any data. You can kind of like chill out, but it's a quick road to really getting in a bad place.
Who first coined that monk mode? Was it that guy who does used to do the social media marketing? What's that guy's name? Yeah, the guy who was in Dubai. Yeah, was it him?
I mean, he was definitely the one that popularized it.
You're right.
I don't know that he was the first to use it. He's been around the internet probably as long as you have, at least. But
monk mode. I think that's where I first heard it.
Yeah. I definitely think it's a scam, and I don't know. I bought into it for a while. I think everyone that starts the online entrepreneurship journey, like you have to isolate. There's just like so much noise on the internet. There's a million videos telling you to do the same thing, but it goes like against everything that I talked about on this podcast. Like the answers aren't outside of you. They're inside of you. Everything you need and need to know is within you. So you need to facilitate the ability to find those answers.
I'm a big believer in that, dude. I talk about that a lot in the book, and I talk about that a lot in, when people ask me for advice. Like the answers are there, and they're just kind of relating it specifically back to hair loss. It's like all the noise of the fear and the external, all the things that you are getting advertised to you, and that is just making it more difficult for you to actually get to grips with what you want and what you know you want to do, or at the very least your next step. And actually, you know, one of the biggest things again about talking to people, it's not just having a conversation. It's one of the biggest things that realizations in my journey, and I believe in it so much. I paid a lot of money to go on like a course to learn how to do, is being listened to. Listening is such a skill that if the general person, I think, just is never aware of it, and I wasn't either, but it's like listening is not like, so say you come to me and you're like, oh Harry, like can we chat, like I'm really just, let's go to the hair, right? Say you're like, oh dude, can I you know, I'm struggling with the hair thing, it's kind of like it's always on my mind, I'm self-conscious, and I'd be like, oh yeah, no, me too, dude, yeah, like I remember when my hair was going and I just did this, it's like, or I'd be like, no dude, like what are you talking about, it looks fine, like it's fine, and I've just devalued your like worries, and I've made it all about me. And that's what 98% of people will do, because they think that's what the person wants. Like really, you're coming to me because you want to get it off you want to work through it. Yeah, you, by you saying to me, like, and I did this exact thing. Maybe it's better to just give my specific example, but when I was like all in my head, like literally terrified of going bald, I spoke to one of my colleagues, and I don't even think she knew she was doing it, but she legitimately just listened. And I was like, I'm like going to be an ugly piece of shit, like if I go bald. And she just didn't say anything. And I was like, right? Like that's going to happen, right? And she just didn't say anything. And I was like, said it again. And I was like, through being listened to, I could actually like, she held the space for me to analyze that thought from like from not a place of fear, through like more of a rational, like, and I was like, is that true? Like, do I know that is what's going to happen? Do I actually know that's what's going to happen? And it's only because she listened to me. Or she'd be like, why do you think that? You know? And I'd be like, well, I don't know. It'd be like, yeah, but why? Why do you think that? You know? And I'd be like, well, I guess just that's what people say. But like, well, what about you though? This is about you, you know? And I was like, that was like the first time in that journey for me. I was like, oh wait, maybe this won't be the disaster that I think it is, you know? Maybe I can handle this. And that was the thing I needed to get to grips with. But listening, dude, is like key. So if anyone comes to you, and it's the classic, right, with the husband and wife, and the wife comes home from work, she had a really shit day, and she just like, oh my God, like Amanda was such a bitch. Like all she does is like brown nose the boss, and I can't even get seen. And the husband's like, okay, well, why don't you just go to Amanda and tell her to shut up?
I was gonna say, have you talked to Amanda
yet? Yeah. And she's like, oh, like just finds it so unhelpful, because he thinks like, and again, it works both ways, but it's just a really common example, right? She just wants advice or whatever. But yeah, dude, if people come to you and they want to open up, like just listen, and maybe ask some of the right questions, like what's making you feel like that? Or like, why do you think,
when they said that, how did that feel to you?
Yeah. What is it about that, like, why is that coming up for you or whatever? And it's a game changer, dude. It's a game changer. And like I said, people were coming to me because they wanted to talk to me. And they were asking me for advice, but actually they don't need advice, like, because they have the answers. And you said that they know what they needed to do. They possess everything that they need to get through it, but they just have to figure it out for themselves. And being listened to, or me listening to them, is one of the most like important things. And I'll give a really quick example just to finish that point. I remember a guy, I forget his name, but he was, I think, in sales, like, shout out if he hears this, in sales, like always on the whole Zoom thing. This was like a few years back, obviously, when everyone was on Zoom, but I think he was doing a lot of meetings like on camera and stuff, and his hair was like really going, and he would got to the stage where he was like tilting the camera like down so it would cut off like the top of his head, right? The hair, you couldn't see the hair on camera. And he said to me, he was like, I think I'm going to get SMP done, which is like the hair tattoos, right? So it looks like you've got hair, but you've just shaved your head. And he was like, because I can't go bald. Like I can't go from like doing meetings like this and then like people seeing me with like no hair. And I was like, why can't they? And he was like, dude, come on. I was like, no, but why Why do you think that people can't see you like that? You know, and then he was able to unpack like all of the things he was actually thinking, which were, well, people won't take me seriously. And I was like, what is it that you think they're not going to take serious? You know? And he was like, and he couldn't really answer those questions. And that allowed him to know that it was just like, he was just kind of afraid, you know, he was afraid of like, what if they don't take me seriously, or what if my performance drops, or whatever it was, right? But it allowed him to kind of see for the first time, like, oh, actually, maybe I could show up with like not this hair, or actually show like what I look like on camera. And it was just because I asked him the question, you know, like, why do you think that? And he was like, oh yeah, I guess I'd never really questioned that before. So listening, dude, there's loads of good books on it, and stuff. But listening is, if you ever want to pick up a skill, or anyone out there listening to this, learn how to listen to people, and it's like genuinely life changing.
And I think ironically, like that skill at its fundamental level, it's doing less.
Yeah, 100%.
It's literally like, it's like meditation. Just actually be still. And that's like super transcendent wisdom, honestly, in life. And I want to, like, with intuition, you know, it keeps coming up, and it's something that in the coaching that I do and all the resources that I built and the podcast I just put out with, like, I built this thing called the Da Vinci Blueprint, which, like, a lot of people ask about, like, how do I find my mission? How do I find my purpose? And I was trying to build, like, the best tools I have. Because even within coaching, like, I always tell people, and it makes it hard to sell, but I won't lie to people. Like, I am not going to give you the answers. The answers are within you. I'm here to help facilitate that. Like,
which
within
is the right thing to do, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And within your story, like, you know, I know you highlighted like a different moment, but I would say, like, on the macro, like that moment where you decided to go to China, like, whether then or now, if you were to like take a concrete P&L sheet assessment, that kid has no reason to go. Like, you couldn't justify that decision, but somewhere in your deeper knowing, somewhere deep within you or without you, you were just like, yeah, you know, I'm going to go. And that inner knowing, like, that is always guiding you. And you touched like on something in that kind of monologue there. Like, you're like, yeah, you may not know your total direction, but you'll know the next step.
Yeah.
And that's what's beautiful, I think, about intuition is it's not really a roadmap, but it's a compass. Like, if you look down at it or take the time to be with yourself, you'll always know what's the next thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think asking why and like self-listening is great to get to that question, because we always race to the end point. Like the hair thing, it's like, well, what if I look like totally bald? Like, what is the end state? You know, I'm we fat, ugly, terrible, blah, blah, blah. Catastrophize. That's the end. But if you walk yourself back a little bit, all right, what can I do today or tomorrow? Like, I could just get a shorter haircut and see what it looks like, and then maybe just try a little bit shorter. And same thing with business or finding your job. Like, you don't have to, and anyone who says that they know, these people with 5-year, 10-year plans, like, they are kidding themselves. And if anything, they're setting themselves up for failure. You know, sometimes I think life will surprise you positively. You know, you'll meet the girl, you'll travel to a new country, you'll get a new job opportunity. I think that's how life is. It's the nature of it all. It's just a mystery. And God in the universe is trying to give you abundance and positive surprises. So you just got to get out of the way. Stop trying to grab onto this, like, no, it has to be this way, or I don't know, like, where's that going to take? What's your investment plan? What's the no, like, that doesn't exist. The future isn't here. And I know I'm kind of wandering a little bit, but like with the intuition thing, just look at the compass and say, like, what is the next thing that I could do? Like, what is the most exciting thing to me right now that I could do tomorrow to be closer or clearer on what my thing might be? And it's like there's like so many different, I think video games is like a good example. There's like the map loading in front of you kind of thing.
Yeah.
You don't get the whole map, but if you just keep running, it's always going to keep to appear, and the path will always like continue to present itself.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. I completely agree with what you're saying. If at the very least you can kind of know what the next step is, right? And who knows how that compounds afterwards. It's an important point. And as you were describing that there, I was thinking about just the general like self-help realm, and I'm guilty of this myself, but constantly feeling, you know, thinking like, right, in order to make this decision, or in order to know what I should be doing or want to do or whatever, like, I need to do more to figure that out. So
Right.
like
Listen to
more
read more.
videos or read more books. Like, right, what is the book that is gonna like actually unlock the knowing for me? And you get caught in that like consumption phase, right, rather than doing phase. And I think that's a big thing. But I do think there's been a shift recently that people kind of acknowledging that, right? A lot of like even people who are huge on YouTube in like the self-help realm have kind of acknowledged like you can kind of get stuck. The very nature of like creating self-help content is like, okay, I'm giving you all this information, but like actually go and do it to the point where you've helped yourself that you don't need this anymore, right? Otherwise you just get caught. And I think actually the guy you mentioned, what was his name? Imran something. Iman, yeah. I think he was accused of that in the past by other people in that sphere of just like beating a dead horse or whatever, just like keeping people stuck in that space of just consuming but not actually doing. And recently, you know, I've really, well, for a long time actually, really been focused on that with my own content of like, I want people who, they come to the channel to need it, they get what they need, and then they leave, you know, and they get on with their life. Because they know, like you said, they know at the end of the day, like they don't need to go on and on and on and on and on and have the same problem like 15 years from now, you know? If that's the case, I haven't done my job.
Right. And I actually had a bit of a, not an entire existential crisis, but as I'm coming to realize this deep kind of wisdom within myself, and I've even like, you know, I'm in the space of, I don't like self-development. I call a podcast about self-mastery. Like, I don't know that there's a great word for it in general. To me, it's like, we're just figuring life out. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I'm in that space. And so I create the content and like touching on some of the more entry level topics. To me, I'm not too super excited by like, say like routine or discipline, like the entry level stuff. But I also know there was a time where that thing served a younger version of me that took me to the next step. And so it's kind of this interesting duality for myself. It's like understanding that really the best thing that you can do to help someone is get them to go inside and inward. And that, like, that's the message I'm trying to hammer home as much as possible. Every tool I create, all the coaching I do is to try to elevate people's awareness, like their internal awareness, and not sell them some sort of scam. Like, I have the answer, like you need to buy into this program or this course. Like, but at this, by the same token, knowing that you may not help the same person along their entire journey, but if you catch every person at that inflection point, like you'll always have people dealing with that issue of hair loss. So it's like, you know, Jim comes in, has his moment, and then moves on, and that's awesome for him. But then the next person comes along. So like you get yours and get to continue to touch and impact lives without having to like, you know, walk away from that kind of content. And hold people as long as it like continues to capture your true passion and curiosity, which clearly it does. Like, I think that is your best clue that that's what like God or the universe has placed you to do, at least for this moment in your life. At least
for the moment. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you're dead right. There's as morbid as it is, there's guys every day like finding out that they're losing their hair, you know, and having that struggle. So it's an important mission, and thankful. Weird how it kind of happened like that, even, you know, before I ever thought about talking about it on BaldCafe or whatever. But I got the camera out and I remember documenting that freak out that I had, you know, that's quite an important video on my channel, I feel like. And I just remember putting the camera up and being like, whoa, like this is it, like what is going on? Like my life, I'm doomed essentially, you know. And I don't know what on earth. Well, I think it was like because I was kind of started to making videos for other things, right? And that was the clothing brand era, and so I was like doing some designs and like showing those to the camera. So I kind of had it all there. By camera, I just had like my phone, and I was like, and then like in that moment, I found out I was going bald, and I was like, this is huge. This is a huge moment for me in my life. Like I have to kind of document this. And I guess that was my like journal entry, you know, but I just did it on camera because it just felt like easier then or whatever. But it's so weird that I did that, you know, and had that moment like on film. And that kind of like was then the foundation for the whole channel and me sharing my story. You know, the fact that I've got that very first moment documented is odd, you know. It kind of doesn't make
Yeah.
sense for a lot of people. Like, I don't think that's a common thing. But it was for me, and kind of like, look where it's gone, you know. So it's very interesting how that happens.
Exactly. I mean, yeah. And to me, it's like the inner wisdom was guiding you the whole time. Again, there's no reason for you to be like, okay, I'm having this deeply emotional moment and it's insecure, it's vulnerable. Let me take my camera out and talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, for whatever reason you just knew, and think about how important it is to have that, because you could have missed it. And then for the rest of your BaldCafe journey and content creator journey, you'll have to be like, and there was this one moment where I lost it and I was just desperate and freaked out.
Yeah.
So you just have to take my word for it. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But the fact that you can show people, like, that showing is so powerful. And that's why I've started even like the vlog and like just documenting more of my life, because I know that these are the years that, first of all, selfishly, I want to look back on, like when I quote unquote make it, or like further down the line, you know, like I want to have it encapsulated. But I also know it makes for such more powerful connection when people can come along the journey and they're like, damn, like he really is like flying fucking all over the place to try to build this podcast, like sleeping on airport benches, like making it happen. I don't know, that human element makes it so much more tangible. And I think very impactful. And it's like the through line of like the content in your work.
Yeah. No, you're dead right. And I mean, there's the classic thing that we all need to remember as well, and it is true, but it kind of goes against our nature to, I mean, what you're doing here is doing it. Like, this is making it, right? Because you know that when you get to like the making it part, you won't just be like, okay, sweet, I've made it, so I'll just stop all this now. Yeah, because I don't need to do this. No, like, in some ways, it's like you never want to get there, because this is it, dude. Like, you are doing it, and this is the bit you'll look back on and be like, wow, like, as huge as this has grown, and as like many people as I've like impacted positively, and all of the rest of the things that feel good, you'll look back and be like, but actually that was like, you know, those were the moments. Like, without those cool moments, like, I wouldn't have done any of this stuff, you know. And it's dead true, man. It's dead true. I'm fortunate enough to be in a position where I can look back and look back on like the very first in-person podcast that I did that got like, I don't know, 1,000 views or something. And dude, I look back, it's so like such fond memories. Like, that was it. I was doing it.
Yeah.
You know, then I had a podcast then. I was sharing the message then. I was positively helping people then. And I know like people say like, yeah, but you know, what have you got? Like, that is the whole like, what's to show for it or whatever, right, on the outside. But it's like, no, dude, like that's it.
Yeah.
Like, I had so much fun then as I do now. But like and I'm kind of saying this as a bit of self to remind myself as well, you know. You know, when I wake up in the morning and I hammer away at my laptop to try and get this book finished, I think, oh, do I really want to do this? Like 10 coffees deep, you know? But I'm like, no, dude, this is it. Like, this is what this is what it's about. So don't forget that.
Yeah, no, I love it. And, you know, I have to continually affirm and remind myself, because genuinely, thank God, like the arriving hasn't been like this, you know, I haven't snapped my fingers and gotten everything I wish for, right? It's this unfolding. But I'm so grateful for that, because it makes me constantly, like, what I like to say is that like reality is a mirror. So like, once you have your internal state created and curated, the external reality will reflect that to you. However, it's a delay, because God or the universe is testing the strength and duration of your intention. It's like, okay, you want it. That's awesome. I want what you want, but how bad do you want it?
Right.
Is this a fleeting desire, or are you willing to post every day for 6 months? Okay. What about a year? What about 2?
Yeah.
Are you willing to be under 1,000 subscribers for a year and a half? Are you willing to just keep going, because the craft in and of itself, the message in and of itself is fulfilling to you?
Yeah.
And that's awesome. It's given me this like big window of time to be like, all right, what about it do I like? What about it do I not like? Am I sure? Should I keep going? And I love that kind of sustained effort. And then reminding myself too, like, I am in the reality that like a younger version of me prayed for, journaled about, built the vision board for. Like, I'm literally in that part now. So I should be immensely grateful, because like I literally I manifested all of this from then. And whatever I'm creating now, like, of course I will get there. And there only ever is the present moment. It's like one of the hardest parts, if not the hardest part about being human, is I think we're constantly pulled out into the future, which is an illusion, and back into the past. Like we dwell on the shit we can't change anymore, and then we're constantly worried about the future, which we have literally no control over. Like no control. It is the biggest figment, and I think that's like a huge, to me, one of the biggest unlearnings I've had from my upbringing. I know we went back and forth about like how were your parents and how whatever. Like I think that whole generation, they got psyoped and sold this dream of like, you know, work the job, whatever, like live this kind of fragmented life, and as long as you stay in the box, there's a guaranteed outcome. And I was fortunate in my story with the unfortunate way that like my parents' story unfolded, that like you can cash that safe check over and 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 bank on that safe reality. And even then you do all the right things, you know, you tick all the boxes, and it can still be taken from you. To me, it was like the rug was pulled. All right, that's a scam. Like that is a complete lie, a myth, a figment of your reality. You have no control. So like people telling you like, oh, take the safe route, or like, what's the risk? Like to me, it's all about definition of terms. And the biggest risk, in my opinion, is not living a life that's meaningful and aligned to you right now. And it doesn't mean like sell all possessions and just disappear today. Like there's a balance of rationality, knowing that likely the sun will rise and likely you won't die tomorrow. But like I have memento mori. It's the sign out of my podcast. It's tattooed on my arm. It's very central to my message, which is like, remember that you are mortal. Remember that you will die. And a lot of people are like, yeah. Like I meditate on death, or like I think about that.
It's very hard to actually.
But like, who's living like it? It's something I think I'm going to write a thread on Twitter about it, and maybe do a podcast. Like, you know, the verse in the Bible, like you will know them by their fruits. In the obviously story talking about Christians, and like you'll see their faith in the way that they live their life. But I think that that's all things. Someone talks about fitness. Show me your fruit. Like, are you a vital person? Are you healthy?
Yeah.
Like you talk about money. Show me your financial abundance. You talk about confidence. Do you walk with confidence? You talk about presence. Do you walk with presence? You talk about living as if your life matters. Where are you dedicating your time and attention? What did you do today? How many hours did you spend on your screen? Like, and I have to be honest and audit myself all the time, because, you know, I'll say it, but then it's 100%. Like, are you walking the walk?
Yeah. No, you're dead right. I totally lost my train of thought. I apologize.
No, you're good.
Your memento mori piece. There was a guy I used to watch on YouTube, like quite a small channel. His name was Wounded Viking, I think is his channel name now, right? And he had cancer. He had like I think like cancer in his mouth. But it was so fascinating because I kind of followed his journey, where he was obviously like, okay, well, you know, like cancer's a part of me now, so I'm probably going to die early. Like I need to go live my life. Like it's, you know, every day's my last. You know, he kind of did, and he went traveling, and he like did all these things, and then I think his cancer like healed up or whatever, like went into remission, and then he kind of just was like still on that same thing. But even he alluded to the fact that he'd lost that like, this could be my last day, because he was like, because it isn't, like I'm still going, like I don't really have to worry about cancer right now, or at least for 5 years or whatever. And he was like, oh, I'm probably gonna have to just like get a job now, I guess, and like actually like assimilate back into the world, not with that fear of like I could literally die like next week, which is what he did have when he was like, holy hell, I've got cancer, like this is the end for me, like what have I got, a year to live? So it's really, that was really stuck out to me, that even someone who's kind of been in that space kind of even loses that, like, oh, this could be my last day. Very hard. I think, I don't even know if it's possible. Like the psychology of trying to comprehend the universe is like outside of our ability. I almost think like that, you know, it's like you can't, there are people that will have like 3 heart attacks and still not like buck their ideas up, right? It's like, it's very difficult to actually.
Yeah. And I think it's like, what I would say is I actually do think it's impossible to just have that be your resting state, because it's too taxing on your psychology. Like your brain is always trying to bring it back down.
Yeah, that
to
would be like
baseline.
Crazy survival mode.
But that's why knowing that, using your conscious mind to give you reminders, like you don't have to tattoo it on your arm, but like have something that brings you back, whether it's a gratitude practice or a weekly reflection, like something that is an intentional tether to that truth. Like remind yourself, audit yourself. Where are we at? Like, how truthfully am I living to the fact that like couldn't be around? And it doesn't even have to be at like that frequent of a clip, but like even once a quarter or once a year, like nobody takes the time to step back, or very few. Obviously, everyone who listens to this is that type of person that probably does. But nobody like presses pause and says like, okay, are we cool with where this is going? Like, I'm now, it's been a whole ass year in this job. Do I like it? Where is it? What's the next promotion look like? Does it change that much? Is it going to raise my baseline happiness? Have I taken the trip that I told myself I would 6 months ago? Like all these different things.
I wanted to touch on just briefly, you mentioned about building this thing like that you're building now, and that I expect a lot of your audience also kind of in that mind frame of wanting to kind of, you know, whether it's building a business or whatever it is, they, you know, doing the thing that they really want to do with their life, let's just say that. And I think one of the key things, I guess we kind of touched on it about making the decision when I went to China, but one of the key things that I reflect on is, like, it's totally fine that I spent time, money, and effort on trying to learn how to code for 6 months and then being like, this ain't it. Because each time that I did, like, really got into something and invested in it, thinking like, okay, this is it now. And then having the kind of like humility, self-awareness to be like, actually, like, this really isn't me, or like, I'm not cut out for this or whatever, is totally fine, because you have to fail in that way to get closer to the thing that that is really what you want to be doing. And that could be working a shit job, you know, like I did for the first 2 years when I graduated, or even more recently, you know, working a job that I'm like, okay, I really don't want to be doing this, you know, but I needed this reminder to do it, you know, and you learn new skills and you meet new people. So like, it's totally, you're not going to get it like straight away. I didn't. I did like, I tried like 4 or 5 different like business ideas or like life trajectory ideas before I was like, actually, maybe this is the thing, you know. And I do feel like, okay, BaldCafe, landing on that, it might not be forever, but it's certainly like a huge mission that I needed to do in my life. But dude, I sucked at like so many other like 6, 7 other things for years before I got to that point. And I wouldn't have got to that point if I hadn't have done all the other stuff before. So I always try to, like, if anyone asks me about that stuff, I always mention that, because, yeah, dude, it's like, I actually think that's the only way you get there. You don't just like suddenly like, bing, that's my idea, that's what I want to do.
Yep.
You think the thing is the idea. A year down the line, you know, like, actually this isn't. But through that, you're a step closer to actually finding out what it is, you know?
Yeah. And everyone who would have listened to the previous podcast, like, that's exactly what I talk about in all of the exercises that I put into this document. It's none of it, like, you're not going to be visited in a dream. Like, the angels could be like, you're going to build the Vitruvian. It's going to be called this. It's going to be called this. Like, there's no divine revelation moment, but you're planting the seeds in your subconscious so that when the opportunity is presented, when you're like, teaching in China, but the work was done so that it's fertile, it's ready to tell you, like, right now, I don't have a roadmap, but I have a compass that tells me here. And I think the best frame for what you're describing, like, people who can get down on themselves, like, holy fuck, I'm 5 years into a career, it's too late to pivot now, or like, I've already invested all this time, it's lost. Remove that as a possibility. Like, nothing is ever wasted.
No.
And one of my biggest inspirations is like the wallpaper of my computer. Like, Steve Jobs, I talk about him all the time, but perfect example from his story, if you've read his biography, like, when he was in university, technically he wasn't even in university, he was just dropping in on classes, but he just wanted to study calligraphy, like the art of like writing. No way, shape, or form did that college age skinny kid know that he would transform how computers interact in typefaces for the rest of the world. Like, before that, computers didn't have interactive typefaces, different fonts. And he brought that from a calligraphy class that he had no idea when he was like 18, whatever. And it changed literally the world and the way Apple interacted. And it was like one of their landmark decisions, like a massive thing. So the point is, and he says this in his Stanford commencement speech, you can never connect the dots looking forward. So you just have to trust that you can connect them looking back. And that's all of life. Like, you'll never know now when you make the first decision, like right immediately, like, oh, it's going to end up like this. And like, the person I'm going to marry, she'll be here. at this time. I'll meet her on this trip and her name's going to be blah. And then I'll pivot into this thing. And then I'll meet this other person who tells me to do this video. Like, how insane does that sound?
Mm-hmm.
But everyone convinces themselves quietly that like it's going to turn out like that. So yeah, like it's just like living in a faith-based reality, I think, is the 100% way to go, and saying like, what excites me right now? What am I curious about? All right, this is the job that's in front of me. This is the open door. I'll step through this one, and then I'll take the next, and then the next, and then the next.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it gets like mixed up with the whole, like you talked about it earlier, is persisting long enough for it to happen. But again, I think like in your gut, you will know if you're just like, if you are really doing the work,
or you're just being stubborn
to take it happen. Yeah. Or is it just genuinely like, you just know in your heart of hearts, like it just isn't you, it's not for you. Like you can't get passionate enough to like really see it through. And I had, just really quickly, an example in my own life. After I failed to join the police, right, I was like, right, what's the next best thing? The army. I'd graduated, I applied to join the army. I knew I didn't want to join the army, but I didn't want to, like, whether it was an ego thing or what, I was like, no, I'm doing it. You know, and I was living with a different guy at the time, and he wanted to become a Royal Marine, like in the Navy, essentially. And that was his thing, dude. He was like, you know, uber masculine, all his family had done that. And he was like, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to join the army as well. I'm going to be an officer. I'm going to join the Royal Artillery. I'm going to do all that. I bought like 20 books about the army. And, you know, I watched all the documentaries about Iraq and Afghanistan and everything. I really was trying to convince myself that I wanted to join the army. But I knew in my heart of hearts, I didn't want to do it. You know, that wasn't for me. I didn't want to do it. But I went all the way along that road, and it got to the point where they rejected me for like medical grounds. Like I had some like eczema from like years back on my record, and they were like, oh, you have to be free from that for like 6 years or something, so sorry, like come back in 2 years, I think it was. And I remember being gutted at the time, like, oh great, like I couldn't join the police, can't join the army, like it's over for me again. But actually there was like a quiet relief in me that I was like, okay, I'm glad like someone else made the right decision for me, because my ego was going to carry me into a world that I knew I didn't want to be in, you know, and it just wasn't authentic to me. And it was scary how far I was willing to go down that road through like not wanting to admit that I didn't really want to do it. And it's wild. Like even saying to even my parents didn't want me to do it. And I was like, no, like that's what I want to do. Like you need to accept it. I'll be fine. Like don't worry about it. And I was still going to do it. And that was like pretty much right after university. And it's crazy to think that my life, I could have done that. You know, if they had have been like, oh yeah, like don't worry about that, dude. Like we'll just pretend we haven't seen that.
Well, I think the thing to highlight there is twofold. One is that ultimately what's meant for you literally can't not get to you.
Yeah.
And what's not meant for you will not happen. Like whether it is by your conscious will and volition or some other coincidental divine like literally, like that is my belief, that of course it could not happen for you, and your conscious mind is like, oh, this is my path, but you were rejecting your intuition the whole time. It's screaming at you, telling you the right thing. So like the compass, it's like looking down at the compass and being like, that's not true north. I'm just gonna walk like southeast, and like this is my north. Eventually you get far enough and you're like, fuck, like I'm lost in the desert.
Yeah.
But then you look down at the compass and it was telling you the whole time.
It was scary. Like, sometimes I forget about that little chapter, but it was scary how far I was willing to go down that road. Like, I was literally trying to brainwash myself into like thinking like, yeah, no, this is definitely what you want to do, Harry. After that, obviously I did the whole China thing, but yeah, man, trust. Like, I think this whole podcast is kind of centered on, like, you know the answers, and focus on things you can do to like connect with those answers. Totally with the whole hair thing, that's 100% what it's all about. Taking those leaps of faith, but the leaps of faith that feel right. Like, and you just kind of, something about it, you just know, like, yeah, this seems right. As scared as I am and all the rest of it, like this feels right to me. kind of why we're here now, you know, answering
Yes,
the
sir.
message saying, yeah, come down. Like, you could have been a serial killer for all I knew.
True, I guess. Yeah,
But I'm still alive.
goes both ways.
And we're doing a banging podcast.
Yeah, well, I think we could go all day, brother. That's a beautiful note to kind of foray into the 3 closer questions I ask every single guest.
Okay.
The first of which is, if you could go back to a younger version of yourself and tell him one thing, what would that be?
Poor. How young are we talking? Just any age?
Any age, maybe the version of you that needed to hear something from the 33-year-old version that sits before us.
I would just say tell that guy, like, it's gonna get better. Like, it will be better. You will get past this, and it will be better. Just have the faith. You know, as tough as this is, it will get better. That's what I'd say.
Amazing. Secondly, what is one quote that's always stuck with you or that you try to live by?
If opportunity doesn't knock, build the door.
Who's that attributed to?
Who is that attributed to? Good question. I forget who it's
We'll
attributed
call it
to.
ancient Chinese proverb.
Probably Winston Churchill.
Yeah, the catch-all.
Yeah.
The catch-all. I love that. And then finally, what do you believe is your unique gift to give the world?
My unique gift is my mixture of empathy and what some people might consider delusional confidence. But that mixed together, I think, is reality, in my opinion. And I think everyone's confidence exists. You know, that's a big thing for a lot of people. Like, I want to be more confident. I want to feel more comfortable. Everyone has it, but the world just kind of like rips it, like takes it out of them. But it's there. Like, it exists. You don't need to like do more to be confident. You just need to show yourself that it exists. I really believe in that. Like, really.
That's so beautiful. I mean, couldn't agree on a philosophical, spiritual level more. It's amazing. Where can the people find you, and what are you working on that you're excited about, brother?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, got the YouTube channel at BaldCafe. Same on Instagram. Those are the 2 kind of main platforms where people can kind of interact. If you want to contact me, like in most of the descriptions and stuff, it's got there. I try to get into DMs as much as I can, so just drop me a DM. The biggest project I've got at the moment is getting my book finished. That's very exciting. Got to decide whether to go the traditional publishing route. I'm going to try, I think, because whatever can allow that to have the biggest impact is the route I'll go, regardless of like the money side of things. And I won't lie, like, I had to kind of like reconnect with the mission in that way, and not be too hell bent on like the book needs to make money, rather like how can this get into like more people's hands? Because if I can do that mission, like the rest will take care of itself. But the book, and there's a radio station here, Radio 1 Newsbeat. They're putting together a little piece on hair transplants, and they've asked me to, I guess, kind of be the devil's advocate, or like provide another point of view, another perspective. I got those guys are supposed to be coming in a couple of weeks, so look out for something, a little cameo from the man himself in there. That'll be exciting. But yeah, definitely hit me up on Instagram if you want to chat and enjoy the content at BaldCafe. Yeah.
Amazing, bro. Everything for Harry's stuff will be linked in the description, of course. If you want to follow along the journey, you found us, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening. Subscribe to the YouTube for the video of me shaving the dome, becoming the man that you see now. Behind the scenes vlogs of this weekend. Got some gym stuff, some other content.
I'm going to do that now, right?
Yeah, off to the gym after this. So you can follow myself, like I said, on YouTube, as well as on Twitter and Instagram at ZDSCHENKEN. Thank you for spending your attention, your most valuable resource, with myself and Harry today. Memento Mori, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Trivian Podcast.
And if he fails, at least fails while daring greater, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat.